Did you know that Did You Know Gaming still haven't done an episode on the Yakuza games? I don't know why, but as the only guy on YouTube who will tell you interesting facts about these games that isn't just the stuff you've heard a billion times, I thought I'd take the wheel again and blatantly rip off of Did You Know Gaming for the second time. So then, did you know that all of the chapter names in the English version of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth are Elvis songs? If you already knew that just from playing the game without anyone telling you, then it's very likely you still believe you're in your 30s. But this was done because in the Japanese version of the game, all of the chapter names are the names of popular Japanese songs. Most of them are from the 70s, but the rest are from the 80s all the way up until 2019. Listening to them for curiosity's sake, I can definitely see why they're popular, because I think they're quite good. But that 2019 one, which was what the first chapter of the game was named after, was made by a band who has a member that people who played Infinite Wealth will recognize. Yeah, look, it's Tomizawa. Now, Infinite Wealth has many more localizations than just English, and after checking the chapter names in all of those localizations, I can tell you that in both Chinese text languages, the names are just the Japanese ones. In Italian, French, and Brazilian Portuguese, the chapter names are just directly translated Elvis songs. German is just completely untouched Elvis songs. But Spanish got the memo and named the chapters after their own old songs, which I think was very cool of them to do. So then that just leaves the Korean localization, which I assume is just the Japanese song names, but I can't guarantee that at all. And then also the Russian songs, which Russian is a language that scares me when it's written down, so I have no idea if these are Elvis songs or their own thing. Considering I know nothing of any language that isn't English, you can let me know if I'm wrong about any of these, or you can let me know if the Spanish songs are any good down in the comments below. Anyway, why Elvis, you might be wondering? Well, thanks to my mum who is obsessed with Elvis, I know that he has quite a deep connection with Hawaii. In fact, he's so synonymous with it that I'm sure that when thinking of Hawaii, people like my mum's first thoughts would be Elvis. But the plot doesn't have something like the lost treasure of Elvis, there's no Elvis karaoke songs, there's no Elvis jobs. So are the chapter names the only reference to Elvis? Well, no. If you were to look into the game files, you can see that the game's internal name was Elvis. Normally an internal or a code name for a game is just the name meant for the developers. These are usually made for projects where the title is undecided, projects that need to be kept secret, or it's just to create some shorthand name to refer back to so that it's easier to assign file names and whatever. So a lot of the RGG games will have this internal name attached to their files in some way, shape or form. These can all be found either with some intense digging or by literally just going into the shader folder in each game and boom, there it is. I don't know how to view files of games on my PlayStation and stuff, unfortunately, so I only know the names of the games available on PC. To start, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, which was codenamed SPR. That doesn't make much sense until you see certain files have the file name of Sparrow instead of SPR, so therefore it's most likely in reference to Jack Sparrow. Like a Dragon Gaiden was codenamed Aston, which my guess is that it's Aston Martin, a luxury British car brand very famously associated with James Bond. Makes sense because of Kiryu's whole secret agent shtick, as well as a few of the other games having internal names named after cars. Then Like a Dragon Ishin was Devil 2. I don't know where the idea for the name comes from, but one might think that the remake is Devil 2 and the original was Devil. However, skipping a few games, Yakuza 5's internal name was Devil. Going forward again, Lost Judgment had the internal name of Coyote. No idea why, but I will say that as a person from a country that doesn't have coyotes, didn't at all realize that that's how you spell it. I also don't know what the Kaito Files DLC would have been called because all files associated with it just say DLC, so maybe that was actually its name. But then Yakuza Like a Dragon had an internal name of Yazawa, which based on what I could find, I believe it's in reference to Eikichi Yazawa, a famous Japanese musician who had a notable history with Yokohama, which includes his song Yokohama Hatachimaya. Turns out, it's a really good song. Given the connection of Infinite Wealth to Elvis and other late 20th century pop songs, as well as Ryosuke Hori, a guy very in love with music, being the director of both games, I think it's fair to say that this theory is right, but of course there's no guarantee. But here's one that I am very confident in my knowledge of, and that's Judgment's internal name of Judge. The game was originally announced as Project Judge. The Japanese name was Judge Eyes with its English name of Judgment, and obviously the whole premise of the game revolves around courts and law and all that sort of stuff, so this one makes a lot of sense. It also suggests that Project Sentry, when it comes out, will probably have the word Sentry on all of its files. Anyway, next is Kiwami 2, which is titled Lexus 2. This is because Kiwami's name was just Lexus, so both Kiwami games have Lexus in their names. Just like Gaiden's Aston name, this is pretty obviously named after the car company. Lexus is a luxury car brand and is a part of Toyota, so Lexus cars can kind of be looked at as luxurious Toyotas, which, yes, I'm sure I've pissed off all car fans ever by saying that, but the Kiwamis are kind of like luxurious versions of the PS2 games in a way, so that's likely where the inspiration comes from. Then there's Yakuza 6 with its internal name of Ogre Ogre F. I'm not sure what this series' obsession is with naming things Ogre, but Yakuza 3 was called Ogre 3, and I can only assume the PS2 games were Ogre and Ogre 2. So I don't know what the F means, but Ogre in the name makes sense as the Dragon Engine very much was like a reboot of the games from a technical perspective. After that is Yakuza 0, which was named Shima. There's a Japanese wrestler named Shima, which could be the reference considering you need to look no further than every heat action in Yakuza 6 to understand how much this series is influenced by professional wrestling. But keeping with the themes of future games, this likely could be the Nissan Shima, which early models of the car are quite well known for being driven by Yakuza. Looking at Yakuza 5 again, considering the game has a whole thing about driving and street racing, the name possibly could be in reference to a series known as One Gun Midnight, which is like Initial D sort of I love cars kind of thing. The main car in that series was a Nissan that was nicknamed the Devil Z. And yes, I said Z. Not sure if that is the reason, and still not sure why Ishin would have been Devil 2, if there really is any reason beyond it just being built off of Yakuza 5. But if that's not the reason why it's called Devil, then I have no idea. Then finally there's Yakuza 4, which was Soul. I don't know if it means anything, but if the car name thing was actually something consistently done, then maybe, just maybe, it's the Kia Soul. But I don't know, it could just be a random word they came up with. Now, as for all the games that aren't on PC, someone probably knows their names. But again, that someone is definitely not me. We're actually going to take a break looking at game technical stuff, but I'll come back with more interesting things, so stay tuned and don't just skip ahead or I'll cry. A popular aspect of the Yakuza games is the inclusion of real businesses that advertise themselves in the games. Some popular examples include Don Quixote in most of the games, or stuff that we'd easily recognize in the West like Uber Eats, Pepsi or Red Bull. So a little while ago now, I made a video documenting nearly every single business across all the games. Some corrections for that video are that apparently Gyukaku exists in every fucking country in the world, and Pepper Lunch, which looks fake as shit, is real as shit. It's even in goddamn Australia. Anyway, other businesses I missed include all the ones that I missed. But that video was of course made before Pirate Yakuza came out, although I did manage to include one real business in it thanks to its appearance in a trailer. So then, it's time to do what I did in that video again, although very briefly, so cue the Tekken music, and we'll get started. Whatever, close enough. Considering this game is just set in America, pretty much none of the Japanese businesses appear. However, every single business in Infinite Wealth Hawaii is in this too, including Dean and DeLuca, another business I missed in that video, except I didn't miss it because when I went to it in game, looked it up, said, oh okay, it's real, I'll write it down. And I forgot to write it down. But regardless, the first new one is Aloha Table, a Hawaiian restaurant in real Hawaii, but they're also in a few spots around Japan. Surprisingly, there isn't an Aloha Table restaurant you can visit in-game. Instead, their adverts are just signs that you can see when racing around in Dragon Kart, and I think that's it, or at least I never saw any signs outside of the minigame. The same can be said for another Dragon Kart exclusive, and that's MSI, or MicroStar International as it turns out. They make all sorts of tech stuff, mostly on the computer side of things, like motherboards, GPUs, laptops, monitors, whatever. Then the final new one is L&L Hawaiian Barbecue, a barbecue restaurant as expected, with a series of Asian American meals. In-game, you can find them in Dragon Kart, as well as in a food truck where all of their food in-game are photos from their real website, funnily enough, and they all look pretty tasty. Except for that one with Spam. I'm a derivative of a British person, but thank God one of the British things we didn't inherit was a love of Spam. Ugh. Anyway, exactly like Infinite Wealth, all of these real businesses found in-game had a tie-in with Pirate Yakuza in some way beyond them just appearing in-game. The ones from Infinite Wealth, once again, had a pretty generous selection of merchandise with the game's logo or with Pirate Majima on it, with some of the real shirts being available in-game as well, but also Aloha Beer put some Pirate Yakuza ads on some of their cans, and 53 by the Sea had a special Pirate Yakuza glass you could get. I don't believe they did a special thing for Infinite Wealth, but Red Bull also made a special image of Majima and Goro to promote the game in that classic Red Bull art style, as well as putting that image on an alarm clock, which has Majima talking to you through a speaker. Then for the new ones, Waikiki Trolley had some posters for the game on their trolleys that go around in real life. MSI had a promotion where you could get a motherboard and a copy of the game. L&L did a giveaway of a few copies of the game, and Aloha Table had a special menu in real life that was supposedly themed around Pirate Yakuza, although looking at it, I'm just assuming it was a special menu with some Pirate Yakuza flags on the food. Now, something that's actually quite interesting about the businesses in Infinite Wealth and Pirate Yakuza's Hawaii is that none of the businesses are destructible. If you don't know what I mean, in the Dragon Engine games, you can smash up tables, chairs, windows, signs, all sorts of stuff at some of the establishments in the games. I don't know if it worked like this in the older games, considering it's much harder to do, but in the Dragon Engine games, you can actually destroy stuff like boxes and shelves to generate heat. So if you want, you can run into a restaurant and destroy everything and get all your heat back. Except it's only the fake ones, like Smileburger, with the only exception of Gindako's furniture you can break for some reason. So understandably, you can't go smashing up an AB ABC store in Infinite Wealth or Pirate Yakuza because it's a real business. Considering the restriction of movement in the turn-based game, it wasn't until Pirate Yakuza that I realized it's not just the real businesses you can't destroy, it's all of them. There's only a few things where you can destroy some tables or chairs, but this burger place in the bottom right corner of the map you just can't interact with at all in combat. A lot of the shops and stuff you can't step into anyway in Hawaii, sadly, so even in combat nothing changes for them, but I can only say a theory as to why I think this is a thing. Let's be real. A Japanese person smashing up Japanese windows, while still a horrible thing to do obviously, is significantly more forgivable than a Japanese man invading America and smashing American windows. You want to know something funny you can do though? If you're at the Anaconda shopping center and you're currently in battle with an enemy, step on the escalator. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's programmed like this, but I went into Lost Judgment to test the Millennium Tower's escalator to see if it did the same thing, and it behaved as expected. Maybe it's because these escalators are quite narrow in comparison, or maybe it's for some superfluous reason, we'll never know. But anyway, it's now time to come back to looking at game files, although for the first bit you don't actually need any special tools to see what I'm going to show you. However, so that I can show you some pre-rendered video files in their full, like 6p glory, I used a tool called VGM Toolbox to view these files. All of the games have always used images to show abilities and heat actions and whatever, although it's not all abilities and heat actions, as some of them might get skipped or something. I don't think it was in the original PS2 versions, but at least in the HD PS3 versions of Yakuza 1 and 2, they had little videos for these upgrades instead. Later on, Yakuza 6 and every game afterwards have used these little videos to show you what a heat action looks like. In Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2, these were in the menus for abilities, and then Judgment and onwards, these were all in the help section. Now, Kiwami 2's heat actions, of which there are approximately 987 billion of them, are pretty much 50% Yakuza 6 heat actions and 50% other ones. All of the heat action videos for Yakuza 6 were recorded at night in-game, and the same can be said for the ones in Judgment, Lost Judgment, and Gaiden. Pirate Yakuza's, not too surprisingly considering how much of the game is set during the day, are all recorded during the day. But back in Kiwami 2, every heat action from Yakuza 6 was re-recorded, which you can tell from the environment, and they were all recorded at night. But every new Kiwami 2 heat action, whether they're completely brand new or a reuse from a game that wasn't 6, are recorded during the day, which I honestly can't think of a single reason as to why they would have done that. Maybe the reason why was because the Yakuza 6 reuse heat actions would have been recorded first and they would have kept it at night to keep it consistent, and then the other ones were recorded later and they changed their mind on the time of day? Who knows? Well, I mean, someone at RGG definitely knows, but I don't know that someone, so I can't ask them. There's two other little things about the heat action videos as well. Specifically, there's one in Yakuza 6 that you can only see when extracted, where a square button appears for the first 2 frames, compared to everything else where the HUD is just completely disabled. In-game, at least, the first 2 frames are just cut out, so you can't actually see it. But something you can see, and something that is so plainly, blatantly obvious, is one video in Judgment's heat actions. Can you see it? Yeah, it's low res, but there is just a massive void of darkness. I have no idea how they didn't see this when they went to record this heat action. Like, this isn't something you need special tools to see. You can just see it. Did they not just think to record this heat action somewhere else? I mean, the reason there's a void there though was because if you've played Yakuza 6 and then go to Judgment, you'll know that Little Asia became a very big construction area. So obviously at the time of recording this heat action, they hadn't finished modeling that part of Kamurocho. It's weird too because all the heat actions are typically recorded in one spot unless there are some location specific ones. Yakuza 6, Kiwami 2, Judgment, and Lost Judgment ones are all at Theatre Square, with the Kiwami 2 daytime ones typically being in a spot like 10 meters from the other spot, weirdly. The Gaiden ones are basically all on that eastern bridge in Sotenbori, and the Pirate Yakuza ones are recorded just outside of that mall with the main Aloe Happy place, whatever it was called, I don't know. But for some reason, this one single heat action was recorded in an unfinished area. Why? Actually, there's another funny thing with the Judgment ones too. I apologize for not giving a jump scare warning, but yeah, all of the Judgment clips are obviously taken from the PS4 version. Some of them you can sort of see the old lighting, but all of them you can see Yagami's bum-ass PS4 model that looks like he's a rat that fell into a pool of water. Now, all of the pre-rendered cutscenes in the remaster of Judgment were updated accordingly, so they have the new lighting, the new Yagami, and are all 60 FPS. Understandably though, there's still a lot of stuff just taken from the original version that wasn't updated, such as the cutscene previews, which again oh! Jesus Christ, it's scary. Now then, using another tool known as Fubar 2000, which is just a great name, I can extract some voice lines for you. Judgment had a mechanic where certain enemies could grab you and take your money. This was something I legitimately learned like 2.5 years after beating the game, because when these dudes grab you, you can just kind of barely press the button within a full 60 seconds and then you break out. To those of you who didn't know about this mechanic, like me, that's why when you break out of a grab in Judgment, a lot of the time Megami points at the guy and he gets mad. It's because he didn't rob you. Anyway, because of this, they added 4 extra voice lines relating to it. One where you don't get robbed, 2 where you do, and 1 where they successfully rob you, but you have no money. Judgment was, as far as I'm aware, the only action game where this could happen. And I say as far as I'm aware because again, I never even bloody knew it was a thing in the first place. But likely as a safeguard in case the mechanic gets added back, or if they can use the voice lines for something else or whatever, Kiryu in Gaiden and Majima in Pirate Yakuza have lines for this mechanic. Here they are in all their glory across all dubs because I'm not a bitch.
残念だったな。クソ返せ！おい待て！泥棒に同情されちまうとは。
Not today. Damn thief. That's mine. Hey, stop! Getting pitied by pickpockets, huh?
そうはいかんで。待てや。なんやおい。悪かったの。
I don't think so. Oh, hold the fuck up! At least fight me for it. Yo! Well, sorry, I guess.
这可不行，给我等等，搞啥呢？天哪！
Majima also has an extra unused voice line which is taken from a mechanic from Judgment. In Judgment and Lost Judgment, when Megami activates extreme heat, picks up a heavy item, then runs out of heat, he'll place it down, and I couldn't get to trigger in Lost Judgment, but in Judgment he'll say a unique line.
Forget this.
Kiryu doesn't have one of these lines, but Majima does, even though technically extreme heat isn't even in the game, and even if you want to say it is, that mechanic definitely isn't. Here's those voice lines.
No.
Oh, fuck, that's heavy.
好重。
There's a lot more unused stuff in every game, which isn't really surprising. A lot of files might be temporary placeholders that never get anything because they don't need to, or in rare cases it's because things end up getting scrapped. Gaiden, considering it was apparently made in only half a year, understandably has a lot of these sort of unused or temporary files still in the game. But before I talk about them, an infamous but beloved aspect of every Yakuza game is that, like 99% of the games are just reused assets from whichever game came before them. So considering it was the most recent action game, most assets in Gaiden are from Judgment and Lost Judgment. Realistically, the whole game is like a really big modding project of Lost Judgment, because if it's not taken straight from it, it's just heavily modified. But interestingly, there are many aesthetic aspects about Gaiden that are taken from the Judgments too. It's not the most obvious thing in the world, but artistically, there are many visual aspects of the Judgments that differ heavily from the actual Yakuza games. For one, many UI elements are much more simplified, much cleaner, and a lot of things are more black and white, so that way when something has color in it, it sticks out more. Even the title screen is a clear example of this aesthetic inspiration. Every Yakuza game before 5 just splashes the logo and then you press a button and you're in a static menu. Then Yakuza 5 and onwards splashed a logo, you'd press a button and there'd be something to look at. In all games except Yakuza 0, it's a character or characters, and of course Yakuza 0's is the empty lot, but it would have been sexy if like Majima and Kiryu were standing in the empty lot, not looking at each other and just smoking or something. Anyway, Judgment, on the other hand, shifted it up by showing the thing you're looking at first, then the title comes in. Lost Judgment did the same thing, and it also changed as you navigated the menu. Then in comes Gaiden, not doing what the other Yakuza games did, and instead doing something pretty much exactly like Lost Judgment. Here's a fun fact. Gaiden has the sexiest title screen in all of gaming history. That's not really a fact, but whatever. Anyway, back to those unused Gaiden files. Once again, looking at some pre-rendered videos, as well as a gameplay tips image that's very easy to find in-game, the spider gadget in Gaiden used to stun enemies. I mean, technically it still does, but it once had the actual stun effect applied to it. Now, this video could very easily have been seen in one of those movie tips that I disabled like a year and a half ago and haven't ever seen since, so I don't really remember all of them. But even if it can be seen through there, the main point is the stun effect that doesn't exist anymore. But something I'm much more confident can't be seen in the game is this video that shows the upgrade screen. Okay, well, maybe this can also be seen in game, but I'm confident that you can't read any of the text. The number of each of the skills is still accurate, but the text, not so much. What this video likely shows is just English text that was directly translated that had not yet been localized, hence why it just says common skill and not shared abilities. The UI display of the tabs is also slightly different, which further shows that this is an old version, but the interesting thing is that bit there that I've kept censored. In the Japanese version of Gaiden, Kiryu's dragon fighting style was called Oryu, instead of just Dragon or Dragon of Dojima. This name could have been something like a Dragon God in English, but instead in English it's called Yakuza style. This became quite ironic because the Yakuza series had its English name changed to Like a Dragon to fit the Japanese name, and ironically the style that's always been called Dragon was now called Yakuza. In this old ability screen video, it was called Return of the Dragon. This implies that originally that's what it was called in Japanese too, and again this was just a direct translation, or it implies that originally it was going to be called that in English. That's a pretty massive name, so in all honesty I prefer just Yakuza over that one. Now then, did you know that the upcoming Yakuza 0 Director's Cut for the Nintendo Switch 2 will not be the first Yakuza game on Nintendo hardware? Yeah, I did know that, I hear you saying. Because yeah, Kiwami was put on the Switch last year. Except Kiwami was neither the first portable Yakuza game, nor was it the first one on Nintendo hardware. If only there was an excellently made video that took someone months to make that describes all of these things in great detail. Anyway, you should watch that to tie you over until I make videos on the Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, because YouTube's cursed me so that every video that I make that I think will do poorly pops off and everyone hates me for it, and then when I spend months on a huge project, it does terribly. So if you enjoyed this video and like the sound of that other one, well then subscribe and send this video as well as that one to every single person you've ever met. And now to end the video in a really funny way, I'm going to say something a little controversial, but I'm sure it'll give everyone a good laugh.